Hey TCS TV viewers, it's Dave from the Camera Store. Have you heard about TTArtisan lenses? There are a lot of lens options on the market. We have Leica, 7 Artisans, but now we have TTArtisans as well. Now there's a whole bunch to choose from. They make a whole range from 9mm fisheyes all the way to a 90mm lens, but they're really catered towards Leica users and people that want to use Leica lenses on other cameras. Now they're all designed to work with the Leica M mount, but you can adapt them to any other brand like Nikon Z mount, the Canon RF mount, and of course Sony and Fuji even. So there's a lot of exciting options out there. Now if you like shooting manual focus and you don't care about metadata, this is going to be an interesting lineup for you. I of course grabbed the 35 1.4. It's my favorite focal length, so I naturally gravitated towards that. Now I did want to get a better feel for the whole system, so I grabbed two other lenses, the 21mm for a nice wide angle lens and the 90mm for a more portrait oriented lens. Now we're going to get into both those lenses here, and then after that we're going to talk to Ron, who's an actual Leica user, and see what he thinks about these lenses. But today we're going to have a lot of fun on putting these sort of budget-friendly lenses on a not so budget-friendly Leica M11. Now let's start with the 21mm 1.4 lens. Now what I like about this is that it's a great wide angle, which allows me for shooting architecture, for instance. And we're downtown here in Calgary by City Hall and the new Calgary Public Library, which is a great place to experiment with wide angle lenses. Now what I'm finding with this lens is that it is a 10-bladed aperture, but I'm not really going for the bokeh with a lens like this. It's so wide, I'm not really worried about that. Now something I like about it, it's very small. It comes in at just a little over 400 grams, so it's very nice and easy to carry around. Now you can put a filter on it with the adapter ring, brings up to a 72mm filter, so it does flare out a little bit at the end. Comes supplied with two lens hoods, a square one and a round one. Now I like the square one, I think it looks a little more trick. I am enjoying this lens. I do find the fit and finish of these lenses are really quite nice, and it's nice and smooth, and it feels very much like a Leica with a little filter wrench on the bottom here, which is great to be able to put your finger in and move back and forth to acquire your focus. Now 21 is a very wide angle lens, which is beautiful for shooting cloudscapes and scenery and stuff, but it's also very good for architecture. So we're downtown here in Calgary. We're right next door to the Calgary Public Library, which is a fantastic model to play around with wide angle lenses. Now what I'm finding when I'm shooting the architecture shots with this 21mm lens, I definitely have to stop this lens down. And what I'm finding is that this lens exhibits fairly heavy vignetting, and the corner sharpness really takes a beating when it's at 1.4. Stop it down to 5.6 or f8, and we are getting some very sharp shots, and it's a very usable lens at that aspect. Now a lens like this, we're not shooting for depth of field necessarily. 1.4 on a wide angle lens, depth of field is much more broad compared to the next lens we're going to talk about. Now let's go on the other extreme here. This is the 90mm 1.25 lens. Now it is a kind of a monster compared to that 21mm lens, and it weighs just over 1,000 grams, which is definitely going to make this M11 feel front heavy or any other body you want to put it on. In fact, it has a tripod mount on the bottom of the lens here in case you don't want to put too much stress on the lens mount of your camera. Now a 90mm lens to me is a fantastic portrait length. This is great for doing head and shoulder portraits, this kind of stuff. And at 1.25 you think, amazing, I'm going to have this super creamy background and very, very shallow depth of field, and yes, you can do that, but at 1.25 this lens is a bit soft. Now it does have the 10-bladed aperture that we found in the 21mm as well. However, this lens, because of its focal length, is going to give us a much creamier background. What I'm finding is that I'm not shooting at 1.25. It's just too soft. I'm just not digging that look at all. But if I stop it down at 2.8 or especially 5.6 or beyond, we're getting some really nice sharp shots that way. So figure out what your comfort level is when you're shooting, sort of that balance between sharpness, depth of field, bokeh, all these kind of things. You're going to find what your comfort level is, but for me, certainly isn't 1.25. Now something else I like about this 90mm lens is the lens hood. I knew it came provided in the box, but I couldn't find it. It wasn't until a little while I realized it's actually a friction fit on the end of the lens. You slide it off and it's a very tight fit, and then thread it onto the end of the lens. That's kind of a cool feature to have because it doesn't take up any more space. Now, the only problem I see with that is that if you're using the lens hood and you accidentally bump into something and provide any kind of dent to it, it's not going to go back on the same way it came on. You have to leave it attached. All right, Ron, we grabbed you because you are a Leica user. You're like a hardcore Leica guy.
Well, it's gotten a couple of years in, so yes, I am definitely part of the team, begrudgingly.
Now, what are your general thoughts of the TTArtisan lineup?
A lot of them are really authentic riffs on original designs that we saw from Leica over the last few years, and even though they're not direct sharp to sharp copies with newer glass. These harken back very well and hold up against their older counterparts quite efficiently.
Now, are you using some of these yourself? Have you?
Yeah, I've played with the 21mm 1.5 because I thought that was a wonderful lens to play with. I've never really shot much wider than 28 is usually where I like to sit. 35 is where I've been playing with more recently, but 21 always escaped me, and I really wanted to play with that field of view, and I really had a good time with the optic. The dreaminess is definitely like that older school mentality of fabricating the glass. Getting that wide open dreamy look is definitely circa 1960s, 1970s, so it does have that kind of character to it, and for the money, I don't blame them.
Is it sort of a, I don't know, a faux pas to put on like such a budget-friendly lens onto a Leica?
No, there are so many like front-end users that are just jumping into Leica bodies, very much so like myself a couple of years back. And of course, you're not going to go and blow a huge amount of money on an M series lens right out of the gate unless you really want to spoil yourself. So these are really, really good alternatives, especially when you're kind of perusing the used market in comparison and still getting great bang for your buck out of these.
And I think that really sort of sums it up. I mean, these give you the experience of shooting with Leica. They're very similar in their fit and finish and their functionality of it. Yeah, you have to compromise a little bit on the image quality and learn how to shoot the best out of these lenses to get the most out of it. But they are a really nice alternative if you're a Leica user.
Yeah, in passing, shooting these things wide open, great. Dreamy, cool, really convenient for certain shooting conditions. But stop it down just like 2 stops. Any 1.4, stop it down 2 stops, you get some really, really nice output out of your M series body as well. And these shot in front of film, probably amazing. So, yeah.
Now, how do you feel about not having metadata, knowing what aperture you're shooting at?
That's something that, yes, that's something that I deal with, and that's in part maybe something that they'll visit later on down the line, but having them not coded, I've shot with non-coded lenses before, so I'm neither here nor there about the info. It's nice to have it, but not mandatory, at least for me.
Cool, so if you had to choose one of them in the lineup, in fact, there's actually one of the lenses they make that Leica doesn't even make.
Yeah, the 11mm. The 11mm is absolutely stunning. An oddball of a lens to be shot in front of an M series body, but actually really cool to shoot. So, but if I had my preference, it would probably fall into that 21, though I do really like their homage to the 28-5.6 that Leica had circa 1950s or 60s. Sorry, internet, if I got that wrong.
Awesome. All right, Ron, thanks for joining us and talking about your experience with the TTArtisans, and throw you back to the store.
All right, cheers. Later.
At the end of the day, what do I think about these TTArtisan lenses? Well, there's a lot of pros and a lot of cons, but definitely more pros than there are cons. Right off the bat, the fit and finish and the feel of these lenses is really nice. I think they've done a great job of manufacturing these lenses. They're definitely going after Leica as far as their look and aesthetic, and it works quite well. But when you get down to the actual image quality, what we're producing from these, especially a really demanding camera like the Leica M11 here, what I'm finding is that wide open, these lenses don't perform as much as I would like them to. Now, we buy these lenses and we're impressed because they have a really fast aperture. However, I don't tend to use these lenses at the fast apertures, and the reason is I'm not getting the results I want out of it. They tend to be a little bit soft and a little bit dreamy, and it's a lot of fun to play with. That's pretty cool. But if you want better quality results, especially with a much more demanding camera like the Leica M11 with its high resolution sensor, you really need to stop it down a little bit to get the best results out of these lenses. But overall, I've had a lot of fun with these lenses here, and I'm finding that's kind of the sentiment we're getting with other people. In talking with Ron earlier, he enjoyed these lenses. They're a lot of fun, and they get a chance to use your Leica gear with some much more affordable optics, because Leica lenses can be 10, 12 times more expensive than what you're getting with the equivalent on these lenses here. And it's really interesting that we're talking about very budget-oriented lenses compared to their much more expensive Leica counterparts, or we're even talking about them on the same page. I love the fact that we have a budget-friendly option for the Leica M mount that is a lot of fun to work with and play with, and allows you to get into these different lens focal lengths without breaking the bank. Now, I want to know what you guys think of these lenses. Have you used them before? Do you have a favorite TTArtisan already? Is there something that's on your wish list? Let me know in the comments down below. Follow us on Instagram, and please subscribe, hit the notification bell, and we'll catch you again next time.